Okay, hi everyone. It's the Regional District Office here. It's myself with Greg Flesher and Nicole. Oh, we got another person. Okay, so okay. So we got Sandra here as well. So that's great. So for those of you who can see, we've in total we have 7, which is a bit down from the October session, but I think in the case of William and Marjorie, you weren't available for the first one, so there'll be information here. And for those who were, one of the things we'll be talking about is a little bit more clarity on the new revised bylaw and the counter-petition process. So I'm just going to go move ahead. Some of this stuff we might go a little bit quicker for brevity's sake because we've already been there. But anyways, let's get going. So, yeah, no, I just want to make sure that's just the right one. Okay, and then you see something in the top there. Okay. And then assumption. Yes.
Slide 2 in the middle.
Oh yeah, right. Okay. And from the beginning. Okay, so here is the usual cast of suspects, the Sointula Fire Department. So anyway, and as we said, we recognize Glenn, and there's Tom and John, and there's a bunch of and most of the others we probably know around town. So just down here. Okay, so this is an update from the October 2020 meeting, and we'll just basically do a quickly refresh of some of the backgrounds information from the previous one, but I'll move fairly quickly so we don't end up having to be around here too long. If you have any questions, we'll basically go about the housekeeping rules. So first off, we're going to do the presenters, housekeeping rules, bit of a background, protection service area, current and future priorities, major capital expenditures. Oh, we got something new. And so are they in yet?
Yeah. Okay.
So we're also talking about major capital expenditures in the future, increased taxation requisition, and the process of the assent to the electors, and we'll have questions. Given the small number of people here, if you want to use one of the indicators, we can ask questions as we go along. If we had a lot of people, that would get a little awkward, but the numbers you have are fairly manageable. Okay, so Glenn Watson, who is your deputy chief, is here with plus 20 years in the fire department. My name is Patrick. I've been a firefighter with the Hag Creek Department for 25 years. And Tom, who I was talking to earlier, who will be coming in, you promised me that anyways. Tom's probably got as much time as Glenn and I together, because it says 35 years, but it's consensus that there's probably time that people forgotten about. So we're asking people to keep your video microphone turned off to conserve bandwidth. The next rule, if you have a question or comment, to use the chat function to type your message to send to the organizer. Given the numbers that we have here, I think it's manageable that if you have a question, turn off your microphone and just sort of indicate that you have a question, and we'll try to answer it, okay? So as I said, don't hold back on question. Obviously, abusive behavior will not be tolerated. Nicole has that magic power. The Zoom session will be recorded and posted on the website for those who want to see what happened. And these questions afterwards, please send them by email to info@rdmw fire.bc.ca, and we'll try to answer them as promptly as possible. Okay, so Glenn, jump in here if I have anything wrong on this one, but for as far as I've been able to figure out, the fire department goes back to the 1960s or earlier. But as a service for the regional district, it was brought in as a local service in 1989. The last approved increase for funding was back in 2004, so about 17 years ago, for $41,000. And that was in preparation for getting the funding up to accommodate the purchase of the current fire truck, which was in 2006. Now, things were sort of going along fairly steadily, but in 2015, British Columbia's Office of Fire Commissioner set out some minimum training standards, which has been a bit intimidating and a bit of a headache for the fire departments. But I think in one way, it was a good thing. It sort of set some expectations on the training for the fire departments, and that's actually pushed members and officers to get more training to become more professional or expert in this field, and from that, in 2016, the Regional District of Waddington declared that the Sointula Fire Department service was that of an exterior operations. Exterior operations stipulate that the department is not to go into dangerous environments. They need to get them under control, but it's something that the Sointula Fire Department is working its way up, both in its training and equipment, to eventually achieve interior operations. Would that not be correct, Glenn?
Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely been our goal for the last couple of years. Of course, COVID's kind of thrown a wrench in the works there, but that's something we're working towards. Absolutely.
And as the operations manager, it's my observation that this department is making good progress in both in membership and it's the training and the equipment. It's going definitely in the right direction, and we look forward to when we can go to the board to ask for the level of service being brought up to interior. So, what is the area that the Sointula Fire Department protects? If you notice here in the pink area, it cuts off to the back end of Caliver Road, all the way around to the other side of the bay, and as such protects the vast majority of residences and businesses on Malcolm Island. Mitchell Bay is not part of the service, but there has been times when the department has gone out at the request of the province to provide protection out there. And as I said, it's probably one of it and Loss are probably our two most active fire departments on the number of calls. And given the isolation being water access only to Sointula, it's quite the responsibility that they manage. So again, if you have any comments to go through this, we can carry on. So what we talked about previously, the current cap on the budget is $42,000 a year. There's an allowance for about 5%, so that gives us about $44,000 that the department can have. Now, if we were to take a look at what the department really needs to achieve its annual cost, which is replacing and old equipment, purchasing new equipment that allows them to do their job better, just turning on the lights. An annual operational budget for the department should be about $55,000. So when you have that discrepancy of $44,000 and the true cost of the department to not be sort of having to make sacrifices, $55,000, already from the get-go, the budget it makes it hard pressed for the department to achieve its needs on an annual basis. Now once you take that into account, oh, we got snow. Once you take that into account, there's the large costs that come into play that the department needs. So what we've also identified, Tom, Glenn, and myself, was that over the next 5 years, what are the major capital purchases? Now, in some cases, we've been very fortunate. Number 2 on the second-hand self-contained breathing apparatus, which you've ever noticed the firefighters when they're doing their practices, that's when they have the air tanks and the mask on. We were able to get some of those SCBAs at a ridiculously low price from Port Hardy, which is to the credit of the officers for being able to be opportunistic. But those are rare opportunities and so it's a cost that's going to be coming up because a lot of the packs, they have a certain best before, because over time the parts get harder and harder to find. How old do you think most of your packs are, Glenn?
That's a good question. We were just looking through those things. What were the age of those ones that we were getting from Hardy? So ours were around the same model number anyway. So
I think they're around 2013 or something like that.
I was thinking 2007, 2008, but I don't honestly remember.
Yeah, as I said, I mean, somewhat like the Lost Fire Department, I mean, they basically had to get rid of practically all of their packs because that they had to get them all replaced. That cost about $10,000, and that's actually a department with less numbers. So 20,000 it could over time is what you're going to be needing just to maintain the packs that we have right now, or get them replaced in a cost-effective manner. Other things, structural fire hoses. I mean, those are every 10 to 15 years you have to get your hoses all replaced. So these are some of the things that every 5 years or so that the fire department is going to have to target. And then in a little more distant, we're looking at the breathing air compressor is got to be at least 20 years old. So if over time the wear and tear on that'll have to be replaced. That's about a $40,000 purchase. And then if the WorkSafe comes about and decides that the existing packs that we have don't contain enough air, you could be looking at an easy $70,000 to get the new packs that are costing about $10,000 a pop. So these are the things that the fire department has to sort of be budgeting for beyond just the annual costs of just sort of maintaining turnout gear, maintaining the trucks, the buildings, and such. So now by far the biggest capital purchase that we're having to work into is it was, as we said earlier, that the fire truck was purchased. It was purchased in 2006. Now the fire underwriter's survey requires the truck to be replaced every 20 years, but can provide an extension for 25 years. So if we were looking at 20 years, that would mean in 2026 we're looking at having to buy a new pumper. Fortunately, the Sointula truck is in excellent shape and is tested annually to demonstrate its meeting its performance standards. So with that in mind, the regional district is cautiously optimistic that we will be able to get 25 years of service out of this truck, which would mean that we'd be having, instead of 2026, we're hoping that we can replace the truck in 2031. Now, in discussions with the fabricators of fire trucks, we've been able to make a projection that truck will probably cost about $590,000 in 2031. Now, Sointula has just finished paying off the current truck. So we have to, now that we, what you always think, oh, I've paid off the truck, I can now, everything's going to be a lot cheaper. No, it just sort of means that we have to start saving for in the next decade so that we have enough money. So, and this is, and for those of you, this probably, you can't see the numbers are too small, but this is basically the model that we have, which shows us if we start, we're in, I think the year 3, so I think we just put $15,000 in. But every year we increase the size of the payment by 5,000. So eventually we're going to get to the point where we're putting $30,000 a year into the truck. And what we've been able to project is that if the truck does cost $590,000, if we use this type of a saving plan, we'll have enough money at the end of it that we can pay the vast majority off. And what it will also mean is that with the debt that's left over, we should be able to pay it off within 5 years. This is important because if we have to have the debt that goes beyond 5 years, it means that we will have to do a counter petition or a referendum to sort of see the payment go to meet the costs. And if that were to happen, it can always get a little bit weird. As I said, what happened back in 2005 in High Creek was we actually thought that it was that we actually had the counter petition go down because someone sort of went around and got a bunch of votes against it, and we nearly lost the fire department because the fire underwriters said, well, if you don't have, if people are rejecting buying a new truck, why do we recognize you as a fire department? So it's a critical threshold. So back in October, we came up with a model for the new bylaw for the funding. The idea was that in 2021, we asked for 65,000 per annum, and that we would then hit certain targets. So 73,000 in 2022, 81,500 in 2023, and all the way up by 2025 to 98,500. And then from then on, we would just do a cost of living increase so that the value of the money going in would stay constant. It made sense to me. Unfortunately, when we took it to the province, there didn't seem to be a structure that they quite liked. What was they just, it was just not a model they would accept, right?
No, they wouldn't accept it.
Yeah. Okay. So what we then had to do is go back to a more simpler form, which is basically looking at the mill rate. The mill rate is your property value and how many dollars or cents per $1,000 would be your annual tax rate. So what was decided is that we would have a 65,500 per annum minimum, or the amount equal to what we rate from property value tax at 60 cents per $1,000. So that would mean if you had $100,000 home, you'd be, or your property worth $100,000, you'd be spending about, it costs you $60 a year. So if we were to use a full 60 cents based on the 2021 net taxable value of the land improvements with the service area, that could raise $76,757. Now, let's do a little bit of a comparison here on the mill rate. So at the top here, we look at Sointula. If we were to have a tax requisition of $41,000, which is what the bylaw says right now, the mill rate is $33.65 per 10,000, or basically 33 cents per $1,000. If you, the next lowest one the regional district manages is High Creek. Theirs is 85 cents. So they are about 150% mill rate higher than Sointula. That's the second lowest. If you look at Wasp, for instance, they're paying about 7 times the mill rate for their fire department. So what this, and when we talk about this bylaw, we're setting the cap of 60 cents per $1,000. So even High Creek, which is the second lowest, is still significantly higher on a mill rate per basis than what this bylaw is asking of the community. What we also did was we looked at what it would, if we were trying to accomplish the same sort of goals that we set out in the bylaw that was communicated back in October. In 2023, we would have to look at the rates being 6% higher. The value of the property being 6% higher than they were in 2021. I think that is possible. 2024, it would have to be 17% higher than 2021 and 28.3 than 2024 to 2025. What it means is that we probably won't be going quite as high as quickly as what we set up the steps. So, but eventually we will be able to get to those numbers. It just might take an extra 2 or 3 years. But what it will do is that we will be able to get there. It's just, it takes a bit longer. So this bylaw is probably not going to be as steep an increase on the taxpayers as what we were talking about in October. And then just to talk a little bit about the financial benefits of having the fire department. These numbers are a little low, but I think that they're probably conservative. Chances are costs are maybe even higher nowadays. But I mean, Sointula provides a semi-protected level service for the residents, which means, but for around $100,000, you're probably looking at the various. You're looking at probably about $544 per 100,000 for your property. If we don't maintain the department to the point that it's no longer seen to be providing protection, then you're probably looking at least $1,000 per $100,000 worth of property value. And that was on the low end. This is like 10 years ago. So when you're looking at $60 per 100,000 for the fire to meet this budget, and you're as you can see, the fire department provides an excellent value, even if you don't look at the fact that it is protecting your property and your family. So that now that we've more than justified the fire department and hopefully the rate increase, what we want to also talk about is how we're going to be able to get this through. When we're changing a bylaw like this, this is not something that can just be done at the board level. It has to have the public consultation. So there's 3 measures that we can do that. There's a referendum, which is basically holding an election. It's fairly costly. It estimated cost about $7,000. The counter petition, which is basically eligible electors within the service area have 1 month to cast the votes against the proposal. And if 10% of the electors vote against, the proposal fails, and we have to go to a referendum. But the cost is only $1,000. And then there's a petition for service, which needs 50% of the eligible electors and 50% of the assessed property value. It works really well on really small communities. We've used it in Quatsino, in Winter Harbor. Sointula is way too many property owners. It'd be a really huge task, and therefore it's not used that often. So what we're looking at doing is going through the counter petition process. So right now the bylaw that we saw is and the counter petition is being sent to the inspector of municipalities for approval. If we have approval, which means that the province says is that it's compliant to legislation, We probably have two choices as to when we can do the counter petition. If it's approved fairly quickly, we could do a counter petition in June. But if not, to make sure that people have a chance to participate, we would have to delay it till September, October. Because it basically, when you do it, it's essential that the process be accessible to eligible participants. And that is the information. So basically, do we have questions?
I have a question, Patrick. Obviously, a referendum is more costly, and yet at the same time with the counter petition, we're not exactly hitting off the numbers that we want to hit as quickly as we want to hit them. Would there be any benefit to a referendum proposing a higher mill rate?
Well, that's a good question. We came up with this mill rate, but I mean, it's not written in stone that it has to be 60-some thousand. If we could, I mean, we could put it higher for sure, and I guess that would be something that I would look into. I mean, the fire department could advise the advisory commission and your electoral director, Senator McDonald, to see whether or not they feel that a higher mill rate is something that the community would be able to support. I mean, as staff, we look to the community for guidance. So this is what we recommended. If the community says no, I think we can go higher. We're not locked in at 60 cents. Do you have a question, Sandra?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Oh, I'm not on mute this time.
No, yeah.
Okay, so one of the questions I have, Patrick, is so since 2004, you've collected over the 15 years $615,000.
Mm-hmm.
I like to see where that was spent. If my math is any good at all, I like to see where that was spent and how much is left in the coffers of that, to be able to actually, for me in my mind, to come up with a number to raise the tax. It depends on, to me, what's in the coffers now, right?
Well,
What's your start point?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Do you have 600,000 in that account or nothing?
Well, we have a little bit of reserves, but I would say that we could ask finance to come to provide the reserve numbers. We could probably come up with that tomorrow. Just ask Rose, but it's not a lot. I mean, I would if I were to make a guess, it would probably be about $50,000. $600,000 on a fire department over a 17-year.
15 years.
2004
to now.
Yeah, that's I mean that's been covering off all the operational costs year in year out, plus paying off the current fire truck. So no, there's not that much left over.
Just
Oh,
I think
okay.
fairly,
So the money that you collect now for the fire is on the property tax, right?
Yep.
How much is that? 30 cents?
It's about 33 cents.
33 cents?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and you're going to raise it to, you first started out, I think, at 90, and now you're down at something else?
No, what we were talking about was potentially over a 5-year period, getting the annual requisition up to about $95,000 a year. Now, what we're proposing in this bylaw is that we take the bill rate, which is not the final sum, but not the 95, but the mill rate. We're looking at 60 cents per $1,000, which if you were to look at, if you use a full 60 cents using 2021's property values, would be about $73,000.
Yeah, okay. So other questions that I've had some of my people ask me to ask is, so as you compile this money, which account does it go into and who collects the interest?
Well, all the money goes within the Sointula Fire Protection Service. There's a small amount that's deducted every year, which is called administration, which goes towards the regional district office itself, which is to cover off the administrative support that that we do. It covers a little bit of my salary and such. But the vast majority of it then goes to it goes towards matching the budget that the fire department helps me prepare. And so when we would be, and usually around January, we bring the proposed budget to the Malcolm Island Advisory Commission, which shows where we expect the various costs are in truck maintenance and equipment purchases, building maintenance, and what we expect to be going into reserves to go towards saving up for the truck and building up reserves. So other major capital purchases, we have the money for it. And then usually around December, we come back to the advisory commission. We say, and we make a reporting back as to what happened in the previous year. So you gave us $70,000. We spent this much here, this much here, this much went into the reserves.
I want to clarify something in terms of the tax rate. Like Patrick mentioned that this year would be 33 cents. That's what it is to your residential taxpayer. That's yielded off of 41 cents. So as Patrick mentioned, the limit of 60 cents yields you 73 cents. And the reason for that is there's weightings applied to different tax categories. Commercial is say 2.45 times what residential is. If you have any industrial taxes, it's 3.5 times. And so it's all pooled together. You saw a figure earlier on for $119 million worth of converted assessment. Okay, so that's what after the weightings applied, you get that assessment. So the residential person is always paying a bit less. So that might be a little hard to explain transparently, but the limit of 60 cents is on the net taxable. Right now, your 41 cents is on your net. What you guys actually pay as residents is 33 cents. So just keep that in mind. So right now you're yielding more than what you're asking for in your first year anyway. So you're not that far out. Back to Mike's question, you're not that far off your target. Next year you'll want to go right to your max if it's allowed. The delay in having a referendum is that you have the uncertainty if the referendum doesn't pass, and that's what happened to High Creek. So they basically lost an entire year. So you take a bit of a risk, plus you pay the $7,000 up front, which again is off the top.
Now, there's a couple of questions I thought we should address. First off, Joy's question, why wasn't there an opportunity to have increases of a smaller amount over the last many years? Also, will this come up again in 10 years with another large increase? A good question. First off, Joy, when you change these financial bylaws, such as they are, they usually require public consent. Like we can go about 5% above, but we can't keep doing a whole series of 5% because the bylaw stipulated a $41,000 cap, and it's a major undertaking to make that change. With the bylaw that is being proposed right now at a 60-cent mill rate, this should be a bylaw that will last a long, long time. Sointula is one of those communities where there is a lot of interest in people moving here. The property values are going up. So what the expectation is that the value of the property value in Malcolm Island or Sointula proper will probably go up faster than inflation. Now we've got the Malcolm Island Advisory Commission and the electoral area director who's going to be the one that's going to be approving the budget request of the fire department. But the fire department keeps saying 60 cents, 60 cents, 60 cents of $1,000, but they're not using effectively. The area director or can basically say, no, I'm going to only give you 50 cents. Or the 60 cents is just the cap. But the way this budget should be and the expectation of property values, my feeling is that in 10 years' time, this bylaw will have the potential to meet the department's needs in 10 years' time, 20 years' time, 50 years' time. I'd be very surprised unless there is a collapse in housing values on Malcolm Island that it would not be able to meet the financial needs of the fire department.
Just further to that, and Sandra's earlier question, over the period that we've had since 2006, we've been under taxing most of those years based on the process that Patrick was talking about. We only hit the cap a few years ago. So basically we are in the range between 30 and 40,000 many years. So had we taxed the maximum from the start, you would have more in your reserve ready to pay for the new truck. There's another way of doing taxes too, and this is a philosophical way of looking at. You're paying for a fire truck for people who are not necessarily residents of your community in 10 years. So if you were to set it so that you're paying half in the future, half in the past, you'd be paying it over 12 and a half years. And that's what you'd be raising your taxes from. And that philosophy has been present in many of the area directors in the past. So they're saying, well, we're not going to pay for the future generations. We're just paying for what we're using now. And so you could pay, many departments pay entirely on debt, for example, for the fire trucks. So that's an argument, though, that is made politically from the area director.
But I guess the one challenge with this, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that if you were to take on a debt that's greater than 5 years, it has to get the public consent vote, isn't it?
Yeah, it's another referendum.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and as I said, maybe I've been scarred from my High Creek experience, but I just find it uncomfortable that when you need to buy something as essential as a fire truck, you're having to depend upon the political whims of the day. I think it's not a bad idea that you have enough funds so that you can, if you don't buy it outright, that you can have it paid off in 5 years.
I think it's worth to mention as well the fact that we've only just paid off our current truck a couple of years ago, or is it 2.5 years ago? And on top of that, with the last 16 months worth of COVID, having no opportunities basically to spend any kind of training budget, $75,000 surplus in capital isn't a whole lot of money when you think about the potential bill that comes from very minor things that have the label of fire protection on it. So I mean, there's big bucks involved in simple replacements, as like Patrick pointed out in there, our air compressor system, tanks, SCBAs. If we had any kind of failure in those critical pieces there that would consider us to be a value or a viable department or not, that money disappears in a year. It's just gone. So I mean, it sounds like a decent amount of money, but again, based on the fact that we've been outside of the last 3 years of putting money against the truck, it seems like a decent amount of money that's sitting there in surplus that hasn't been being used. But again, I think that's kind of situational right now. Looking forward, that's kind of a long gap between now and the purchase of the next truck, when technically 5 years from now we should be buying a new truck, which at the current price then probably still $300 and change thousand, which we wouldn't ever come close to being able to pay off at our current value. So
yeah, and the other thing that's got to be, just like as you're starting to see as the world's coming out of the pandemic, the spending is shooting right up. The department was really doing very, very well. I think your membership is over 15 now, is between 15 and 18, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think we're at 18 on the board. We're doing 14 and 15 regular members on training, typical training night. Yeah, you bet.
And the majority of those members have been on the department for about a year and a half or more. There's quite a backlog of training needs. You've probably got about 10 members or more that are probably looking at live fire training, and as they become, they make themselves more part of the department, so they're not viewed as being a bolt risk. You start having to look at things like turnout gear, which for a firefighter to be fully effective, you're looking at about $3,500 worth of gear between coat, pants, helmet, mask, boots, gloves, and such. So the department hasn't been spending a lot of money in the last year and a half, but there's quite a backlog of purchases that need to be done. Like, how much, like if you were to look at the members that are sticking around, how many sets of turnout gear would you say the department needs to have so that they can be fully effective?
Well, that's just it. We've got a 10-year maximum on gear right now. So I mean, it's a constant turnout, you know, even if you have 15 people and we're replacing 3 of those a year, that's assuming that they last the full duration. It's still a constant turnover. We're aiming at, you know, that between 2 and 3 sets a year to at least get on top of our older gear for all of our current members. But again, that's based entirely on our membership. The stuff we get is generally fairly interchangeable, like from, you know, unless it's a vastly different sized member. We do have the opportunity to recycle that gear to a degree, but if we get a real tall person or a real short or slight person, then we have the need to get the gear for them too. They can't participate in live fire training without fully legal and safe gear. So yeah, we're definitely generally looking at 2 or 3 a year, and that's not something that would really, you know, bottom out. We're going to be doing that indefinitely, ideally, assuming we keep membership up.
Another question, Sandra?
Yeah, there should be a match from the BC government for the fire department in some manner. Do you know about these matches that the BC government does for our rural fire departments?
Yes, they're usually few and small. We were very fortunate at this end of 2020 in that we got a grant for the Wasp Fire Department to replace their 30-year-old Suburban with a 2-year-old crew cab 4x4 pickup. But that was a grant that was targeted specifically for road rescue fire departments, which Wasp is the only regional district one that is identified as such.
Okay, so these grants are for each specific fire department or for the Mount Waddington area?
Well, I was going to talk, there was another one that was about a year or two ago, which was 20,000, but it was for it was each municipality or regional district, which would meant that if we when we put the grant in, it was for 4 fire departments, not 1. And I don't know why, but the municipalities do better than us. We had a very good proposal that was looking at a regional protection model that was supposed to help us out with wildfire, yet also fill in some key infrastructure. We got nothing.
Okay, so can the Sointula Fire Department put in their own proposal for a grant from the BC government?
They couldn't. They'd have to do it. It had to be a local government that made the application, and that would be.
Oh, okay. So maybe you can send me the information about we can send that to.
But that's it. It was a one-off. It's not a regular thing, and frankly, that was the first grant like that I'd seen in 15 years.
Okay.
I mean, that's the real challenge with the provincial government. And I don't know why it is. Like gas tax, it is very difficult to get gas tax funding for a fire department.
Interesting. The same as I know WFP has coughed up money for the High Creek truck so that the High Creek Fire Department will go and help them fight forest fire. So
No,
I'm wondering too, that's not true?
no. There was, okay, it was a little, we were, the last, the existing tanker truck that Hyde Creek had, we got support from Western Forest Products because the camp manager was on our fire department. And he basically said, he allowed us to park the truck in their shop. And he paid the guys to do some welding for us. It was totally off the books.
Okay, but more recently, it was Port McNeil that got the money, Sandra. They donated money to.
Oh, okay, so I know, okay. So, and they got the money from Western Forest Products,
That's right,
the
but
holders of the TFLs, right?
yeah, it was related to the WAS rail accident. Because Port
Oh,
McNeil,
okay.
if you
So
know-
why is Sointula has TFL holders? So why is Sointula not privy to having these people that hold these TFLs assist us in our fire department?
this is something the fire department could do, because Western, they come to our board meeting periodically, and they are always announcing their grant funding. They had 41,000, but keep in mind, that's over entire Vancouver Island, that they had this 41,000 grant
We
program.
don't care if we get a grant. It's just that we should be up for grants because everybody else is, right?
100,000 last year.
That's-
And
yeah.
the fire department could apply directly to Western for that pot of money, okay?
Okay, cool. So again, I say I need for you guys to send me the information about who I contact for that, for both of those things.
The thing is, Sandra, is that if Sointula is going to put a request into Western, you're going to be competing against McNeil, Wasp, Hardy, Port Alice.
That's okay. We got a big heart over here. We know how to propose stuff.
PFL on Malcolm Island. So, I mean, it's sort of like, I don't know, a community that has no dealings with Western Forest Products. I mean, you can make these applications for the grants, or whether it's for the private or the public sector, but it's a very uncertain and frankly, the opportunities for success, and in the case of Sointula, I just don't see it. We need to have funding that is reliable, that meets the operational and the capital needs, and this is what this bylaw is all about.
That's one
Are
of.
you telling me that Western Forest Products holds no TFLs on Malcolm Island?
Yep. It's most of the forest licenses on Malcolm Island are woodlots. That I think I'm drawing this upon my experience when I was working for the Forest Service 15 years. What's that?
You're correct.
That all the public forests are woodlots.
Okay, and they get their woodlots from the Crown, from the government, or are they getting their woodlots from Western Forest Products?
No, they get them from the province.
Oh, okay. So then I should go to everybody that holds one of their little things there. Maybe they can all throw in an extra $100 a year to help fight forest fires if there's forest fire.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, the community can do that, but as I said, it's the opportunity to make a significant impact on the financial needs of the fire department is, well, I mean, you can try. I would be surprised if you could make a significant inroads on what the department needs that way, though.
There is a source of funding that is more secure, and the board has actually been lobbying for that. Back in the 90s, there was a tax put on insurance. So every time you buy insurance, I think it's a 2% tax. And that 2% tax was supposed to go to support emergency services, including fire departments, and would yield a really large amount of money. So the mayor of Port Hardy has enlisted the support of the Vancouver Island Association of Municipalities, as well as all the regional district communities, to lobby to have that tax that was put on to support fire departments restored province-wide. And that would be a reliable type of source of funding, because there we're talking a significantly large source of funding. And right now it's going to general revenue. So the province is collecting that tax, but it's not going to emergency services.
Mm.
And as-
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're not necessarily shooting for what you're seeing on these sheets that Patrick and those guys have worked out for us is not what we intend to, or expect to have to hit every single year. It's establishing a cap. The idea is we want to have something that is secure. Not grants are fantastic, and when they come up, I absolutely agree we should be applying for. But those are not things that we can roll into a long-term secure bankroll. Basically, we're trying to establish what we may need from now for the next 15 years or more, and work on something that we can actually address with what we have available. So, I mean, the whole idea is proposing a new limit because the limit of our current 41,000 is not enough. So that's why we're at the point where 15 years or whatever the number is after our last time we've had this conversation is to establish a new working budget for us that will actually support us without having to do this as a regular thing.
Yes.
And
I totally understand what you're saying, Glenn. And that's why I'm saying that these people that hold these wood lots should be able to participate in the permanent support of our fire departments, even if it is $1,000 a year. It's in your budget and it's money that you can use, right? Even if it's $500 a year, it's still money in your budget that you can use, and everybody participates. And then maybe, okay, so I've been informed that
She's muted herself.
I think you just muted yourself there, Sandra.
you can't go out and fight forest fire.
Well, actually,
Okay? By law, you got that area of Malcolm Island where you fight forest fire. You can't go out Mitchell Bay, fight forest fire. You can't go in the forest and fight forest fire. Right?
Anytime there's a forest fire, there's definitely protocol for that. We have to talk to our dispatch and get a ticket number who talks to
Yeah.
the wildfire. And yeah, so we
I know
definitely
the fire
are.
would be put out. I know that because I'd be there helping you, like everybody else more likely would be. But what I'm proposing to you, Glenn, is just to, if you got this guy giving you $50, this guy giving you 1,000, that guy giving you 100, it's permanent money for the fire department. It lessens you having to beg for grants and that kind of stuff, right?
Sure,
Why is
but
everybody else
in the
getting off
example you've
scot-free?
given, actually, when we do attend those fires, those stakeholders are actually paying for us as a one-off. They'll actually be billed. I mean, that I don't have any idea how that actually works, honestly, behind the books. But
Okay,
we
nobody's ever
actually
informed
issue.
me of that.
Yeah, we will actually issue a statement saying the equipment we've been using, the truck, the number of people who were on scene, and follow up the ticket that we were requested by forestry or whomever did. And if that happens to be on a woodlot of some sort, those people will be held responsible for the billing, and you'll see the check at the end of the week.
Okay.
That doesn't come out of our budget. And if there's gear that's just destroyed in the process, it's also covered by them, or at least expected to. We've had these conversations with wildfire for sure.
and
Oh, okay. So see, I didn't know about that part of it at all. You see, so like I ask all these questions because I've got very little information, and some of it is information that just doesn't apply, right? Sort of thing. So thank you, Glenn, for straightening that out. But I'm still going to try and get those guys to throw into the kitty.
Absolutely.
It'll be fun.
Best of luck. That'd be fantastic.
Then he's mad at me.
and Sandra, yeah, I mean, having an active electoral area director that can go informally and approach the powers that be to provide extra resources, that's wonderful. And as I said, and 3 cheers if you're successful, because every little bit helps. And again, as Glenn was saying, the 60 cents is the cap. Every year we're going to be the budget at the start of the year will be going to the advisory commission, and in the end it will be the electoral area director who decides whether to fund that budget in full or ask for some changes to it. So, but yeah, no, if you can charge them into giving a big donation, no one will be saying no.
it'll be fun trying to do it. It'll wake them up a little bit too. And with the board that I have great confidence that they'll make the decision to send me to either give you 30 cents or a 60-cent cap, right? So we'll see what this board has to say.
Okay. Let's see. We got some more questions here. For the counter petition process, how are eligible participants informed? What is the response time?
Do you want to flip to the Word document?
Sure. Okay, we're just gonna share a screen here, and it's right here. Okay, it's okay. Okay, so I'll let Greg I'll lead this one.
Okay, this went to the board in November, and it didn't go back to Sointula until that you had an opportunity for a public meeting. As Patrick described, the bylaw that you initially went through the Malcolm Island process had a whole bunch of stepped options. And so when this particular bylaw, 986, went to the board, Patrick then wanted to take this one back. And we missed the deadline for the 2021 taxation period because there's a whole bunch of lead time issues, which Marjorie's question is addressing. And so first thing we have to declare is the type of process that we're having. And there's an official sort of process. It's very much like a public hearing. You have to go through a very rigid process of advertising and timing. So basically, after the board, first of all, we have to get the ministry to approve the bylaw. So we've given 3 readings to the bylaw back in December, and now we've sent it off for the ministry approval. Basically, we missed the tax deadline for 2021, so we are waiting till the summer or fall to actually have it approved. So when the ministry comes back with the approval, which probably won't be in time to do it until fall, because unless you want it done over summer, but I think the wish of the advisory committee before was to wait till fall or make sure it's done before June so that people don't leave for the summer. Although with COVID, who knows, you may be around in the summer anyway, but hopefully not. So basically what will happen is the minister approves the bylaw, then we get the approval to take it to counter petition. And this was to try to pre-approve the forms ahead of time, just to, if we could try to beat the deadline for taxation. And of course, we didn't make that. So first of all, we make a declaration about the number of electors. So the 52 electors, I'll be updating that as soon as we get our new mapping. Basically, we had mapping from 2016 or area photographs from 2016. So we can estimate the number of households because we won't have the census information in time. But by that estimate, we came up with 520 that would be electors. What we also do is we take the non-resident electors. You have people that say have property in Malcolm Island. They could vote if they're a resident of BC, they can vote in the election. If they are residents of Alberta, they could not. So we look at the current roll and we'll fine tune that, but it's not going to change a lot. It might go up plus or minus 2 electors is my guess. So, but I'll look at that after the ministry approves the bylaw. So maybe move ahead a little bit. Next page. Okay, so we have this form that we have to have, and so what we do is we use a set petition form. So everybody has the same form. There's 2 ways of doing a petition. You can do a petition where you have a list and everybody just signs off their property as a list. And because of the experience that Patrick alluded to, that's an easier process to do, but that's also the list goes along with the salesperson. And the salesperson, in the case of High Creek's experience, persuaded people to sign the list. And he said, well, everybody else is signing it, so you sign it too. And the message was incorrectly described. It said basically they are going to raise their taxes for the fire service. They were going to raise them, I think, about 30%. But that 30% was being conveyed as your taxes will go up 30%, which actually was quite a different message, because if you're paying $1,000 for your total taxes, that's $300 increase instead of the $30 increase that it was actually. So we don't really want that salesperson petition type of thing to go around. So we set a form for the electors. Everybody has access to the electors, or to this. We'll be publicizing it in the Eagle, because the Eagle goes to all residents, or we can arrange it to go to all residents, because basically we just arrange it with Kathy to make sure she sends enough copies over, and we could put them in the resource center or other places in Malcolm Island to make sure it's distributed to everybody. So we'll put the notice in the Eagle, we'll have it on our website, and we'll also provide copies at select places in Malcolm Island. Probably the resource center, Marjorie, would be a key spot to have paper copies of the petition available. And then we set the process how people can deliver the petitions to us, and that includes all sorts of different methods. They have to be a citizen, they have to have lived in BC for 6 months to be eligible, and they have to be in Malcolm Island at least 30 days before signing the form. So the dates are important on this, so that's why you see them grayed out, because until we actually get the dates, we can't kick those things in to declare whether a person's eligible or not. So go to the next page, if you could, Nicole. And here's the actual declaration and the petition form that people will be signing. And so basically it tells what the purpose is. We'll have the bylaw attached together with the map that Patrick showed you earlier, showing the fire service, so that they basically can tell whether they own property within that service area or not. And it also describes, you can, if you have more than one elector for every property, you can have several people sign the same form from that property. So if you could move up a little bit. And so there is the way that it actually looks. So that's what everybody will be doing. That gets these forms so that they're certifying that they're actually an elector. We could check if we needed to check, but we'd only check if it was very close. Like if it's basically, if you had say 56 people signed it, so then we'd check to make sure that they are in fact electors.
For those of you from about, your memories go back a little over 10 years, we did a counter petition on the solid waste service, and that one was a fairly resounding rejection. So, I mean, one of the reasons why we're trying to have these meetings, trying to explain the process, trying to just to demonstrate why this is a good thing for Malcolm Island is because, you know, sometimes a proposal's put forward and it doesn't have the public support.
And in this case, Patrick has provided the information about property insurance, and the cost of running your fire department is minuscule compared to paying for property insurance without a fire department. And I think that's kind of the key message that is fairly obvious, of course, to people involved in it, particularly the fire department members who work for basically nothing as volunteers in your community. And not funding them properly means that everybody will pay a much higher cost.
Yeah, as I said, I mean, and I mean, having been a volunteer fire department for a firefighter for over 25 years, you need the material support of the community so that you can get the training, you can have the equipment to do the job properly. And I know that when I first joined the regional district, there were challenges, a lot of overly out-of-date turnout gear, and credit to Tom and Glenn, who've been the leadership practically since I started with the regional district. A lot of those deficiencies have been made up, but those improvements, the ability to keep doing those improvements, are basically being restricted because basically they just don't have the resources they need.
Greg, you bring up a really good point there around the volunteers in Sointula not being compensated. And I've been a volunteer in this community for a lot of years, and I absolutely love volunteering here and not getting paid for it. It makes it far more sweet to do. The problem I'm seeing is a lot less people are willing to do that. A lot of numbers being thrown around having to do with new trucks and training and hoses and equipment. 10 years from now, Glenn's gonna be old and decrepit.
No,
And
no.
is he really going to be at the helm anymore? And is there any room built into that budget for financial administrative support in the future?
I'd have to say, at this point in time, no. Depending upon the you know, how the community grows with the tax cap, maybe there are some interesting things that other departments have done for recruitment and retention that maybe at some point the department might want to take a look at. In the case of Cole Harbour, they have a volunteer medical assistance program, which puts a few $100s a year, and it goes up depending upon how long the member's been in there, to cover off things that health insurance or doesn't cover. So that's been Cole Harbour's done that. I know Hyde Creek will compensate for gym memberships. So there are things like that. None of our departments have any stipends like direct cash for the officers or the members. Whether that will be always the case, I don't know. I know that at least in our hall, that's never really come up. But I know in some of the municipal halls, they do compensate the members for practice times, and they have stipends for the officers. So, you know, anything's possible. It's just you having to go to the community and getting that support.
And it could come up because this paid on call is being debated throughout the province in terms of different departments. And if it was to come up, you'd probably have to have another bylaw change where you have to increase the taxes. The one reason it causes a problem though is because in a way, you know, what Mike was saying about is that he likes to get paid or to be a volunteer, because sometimes it's kind of insulting if you get paid on call and you, like I know of a department, their pay on call was $2 a day. And you know, I think most people would agree they would rather not get to be valued at $2 a day than to get that very small amount of money. And even when you have the mixed departments that some get paid and some volunteers, that's not good for morale if one person's getting paid on the call and the other person's not. So it brings up a whole bunch of things, but it's quite right. Is if there's more and more demands put on the departments, and it's taking more and more of the volunteers' time, it's going to cause people to look in that direction. So yeah, be prepared for that. So if that's a fairly major change. What Patrick was talking about, the inducements, just to make it more, you know, recognition type things, you don't have to change radically to do that. You could do that within the existing budget, but not paid on call for sure.
I just noticed Joy had a good point before we put the PowerPoint presentation up to see if we can update those insurance numbers. I can certainly give that a try, Joy. Try and see if I can get something 2021 instead of 2011. I also want to say that the unnamed fire department, the administration of the government then told them that they had to do things their way because they were paid members of the of that local government at $2 a day, which certainly was a bit of a clanger too.
Well, it's the one nice thing we've got, at least. I mean, yeah, it's there's no salary for any of the chiefs or deputy chiefs, as where some of the municipalities do have that. But on the other side, they don't have Nadine and Greg and Patrick. They're doing all the book work for us that I certainly wouldn't thank you for. So there is, in the last few years since the playbook came out, amount of paperwork coming across our desk on a daily basis is just staggering. And I tell you, I you couldn't pay me enough to step into that legal nightmare. So I mean, we're incredibly thankful for the amount of work that is offloaded on them for that portion of it, because yeah, I mean, I think I mentioned this in the last meeting. There's the whole world of fire protection is becoming more and more. They're trying to offload all of the accountability onto the officers. They're basically trying to make it sound like they're doing us a favor by saying we're not breathing down your neck with WCB and all of this on a daily basis. But the moment somebody steps off the truck sideways or drops a ladder on their foot, they're going to be here going through every piece of training record and finding out who at the end of the chain authorized Joe to lift that ladder. And if there's a break in that chain anywhere, we're the ones going to be on the hook for it. So I mean, that's where, even with the insurance that we've got through our liability through the regional district, they're still looking for accountability. So that's where all of this training and trying to fill any kind of gaps here and there with make sure our gear is up to date and all of these things that may sort of be easier to let slide in the past. That's something that's not certainly something I want to be worrying about when I go to bed at nighttime, is whether, you know, the guys that picked up a flashlight whose battery was dead didn't know how to replace the battery. Was he trained in that? Should he have just been sent home at that moment because he wasn't specifically trained to change a battery in a flashlight, which literally they are being sued for? So it's those little things that, yeah, for a person who's just there for a volunteer position, we don't want to be worrying about at the end of any given day. We want to help somebody put a fire out in their house and clean up and make sure it's safe for the next go round and not be worrying about lawyers for the next 2 years. So that's a big part of it, why we're trying to keep all of these things on the up and up. And again, I'm thankful every day for we get to pass off these reams of paper over to Nadine over there in Port McNeill. So yeah, it's a double-edged sword, but I again appreciate the regional district for what they've done in that department.
Yeah, we're very appreciative of Nadine and Nicole, because they keep me out of jail. At this point, are there any more questions? Okay. Well, okay, go ahead.
So to me, this comes down to at my next board meeting, we're going to give you the okay for the cap or 30 cents or whatever we decide.
Well,
Is that how that works?
well, actually, do we have?
I can do it without a meeting. I can just talk to them all online and get a yay and a nay.
The bylaw's already gone to the ministry for approval, Sandra. Like
Yeah, I know.
given back in December. We just held off on sending it off to the ministry until the community had some, I believe.
Okay, so it's off to the ministry, so it doesn't matter what the board says?
No, it still has to go through the petition process that we
Okay.
talked about. And that's where the community gets its say, but it was trying to get the message out to the community so that there's enough spokespeople in the community that know what it's all about. So when the petition actually does go, it doesn't catch people by surprise.
Yeah, it's, as I said, I mean, there was a question earlier, you know, why was it, how come we couldn't have done it just a few more times along the way, as opposed to, you know, let 17 years go by. Again, this is a fairly onerous process. It's like when we raise 5% the sewer rates, that's the threshold is far, far lower than amending the cap on a tax requisition.
The board will have another process though, Sandra. Remember the form of the position where I grayed out those areas? Once we get the bylaw back from the ministry, then the board has to approve that petition before it goes to the public, and the dates that we were talking about. And again, that will kick off more public process in Malcolm Island. And as I was mentioning, we'll get it to the resource center and a few other places that your committees will tell us where you want that petition available so that people can pick it up if there's problems on that.
Yep, okay. As long as we're informed.
Yep. Yeah, when staff doesn't inform the board, we get in trouble, and rightfully so.
Yes, I can imagine.
Any other questions? Okay, well, I very much appreciate everybody giving an hour of your time, or actually more than that tonight. And we will continue to try and keep, of course, Sandra as the electrical area director, the Malcolm Island Advisory Commission, and as much as Sointula as possible as things move forward. And as I said, I'll be always in continued contact with Glenn and Tom and the other members of the fire department. So if you have any questions, info@rdmw.bc.ca, or just drop me a line and give me, and we can have a chat. So yeah, this is one of my big priorities for, oh, it's supposed to be 2020, but it's 2021. But I really would like to get the Sointula Fire Department at a point where it's on a sustainable track financially, so that it can continue to do what it's been doing for the last 50+ years. So thank you very much. And at this point, I'm just gonna leave, shut down this, and but please contact me if you have any questions after the fact. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Patrick.
Thank you, Patrick and Greg.
You're welcome, Nate.